Barlamore is here, and with it brings all sorts of goodies. Today we're going over everything I have learned at the Perilous Moons. I've tested 3 sets of gear, ran through a few completion times, and I believe I have all the mechanics nailed down so I can show you everything that you could possibly need to know before you jump into things. Getting right into it, we should talk about the minigame itself. It's inspired by Barrows, and it is designed to focus on the mid-game grind around 3 different entities, each one named after a different moon. If you can handle the Barrows, you are going to have an absolute blast here. I would say anywhere between base 60s and 70s is going to be more than enough to handle this challenge, but a key factor is to make sure that you have that prayer level for protection from melee, as it's rather important. Something rather unique about this minigame though, is even though there are a ton of players in the same room as you trying to beat the boss, their input to the game itself has 0 effect on you. So let's say that again. Regardless of how other players do in this minigame, it doesn't affect you in the slightest, which is pretty awesome. While you do not have to kill the boss themselves, this minigame does focus on combat and introduces players to mechanics found at higher levels of PvM challenges. Each boss attacks the player with melee-based attacks, and as the quest itself mentions, defense is going to be king here. Each boss also showcases 2 special attacks that are unique to each moon, and we'll jump into that here very shortly. This minigame is where you can receive the Blood Moon armor, Frost Moon armor, and the Eclipse armor. Just like Barrows, the rewards are given to players based on how many Naguas are subdued. That's the title of the bosses here, but I'm just going to refer to them as respected moons, gods, or boss. So if you wish to have the best odds of getting uniques from each boss, you're going to have to subdue them, or you can skip the bosses you don't particularly like and just have chances at receiving the loot from the other bosses. Outside of the combat itself, Perilous Moons has honestly a very beautiful dungeon to explore. Here you can find different kinds of plants, fish, and monsters to interact with. The only really odd one out of this group would be the Sulfur Nagua, which is a level 98 combat monster that drops the sulfur blades. This new melee weapon is 4 ticks and attacks twice per attack. It rolls the damage normally, but it splits it into 2 different hit splats. Outside of that, the room provides the player with all resources that they could possibly need. No, really, you're never going to have to need a bank once you understand how to get everything that you need. Before we get into that, let's talk about getting here. For this minigame, you're going to need to complete 3 quests. Children of the Sun, just to get to Barlamore itself. Twilight's Promise, which gives you access to this area of the map where Perilous Moons is actually held at. And finally, the quest itself, Perilous Moons. These 3 quests can be completed very quickly. The Quest Helper Guide already has something out for Children of the Sun, and I was able to complete the other 2 quests within an hour without any guides and just spacebarring through it and hoping for the best. So really, it should not take that long. During your final quest in the Perilous Moon quest itself, you will actually be forced to complete the minigame. However, I can confirm that the rewards from doing so do have the same chances of giving you unique items as you would find outside of it, so it's not like a downgraded version that we're working with here. Now, once you get far enough into the Perilous Moon quest, you're going to go around each dungeon area and build a camp. These are very important later on in the minigame itself and during the quest, as they house your cooking spot, an option to make tea which fully restores your energy, and gives you crates for herb, fishing, and hunter needs that are going to be required throughout the dungeon. While we're here, we should talk about those. These fishing spots are found in these areas of the dungeon, and you can snag your fill of the fish and cook them away. The higher your cooking level is, the quicker you get to cook things too in the dungeon. For example, I have 99 cooking, and I can cook 2 fish at the same time. Not really sure where this cutoff is for double speed, but even if you can't multi-cook, you can cook food very fast here, so it's not like you're going to be sitting at these campsites for long. For Hunter, you have the option to go to these rocks found in this area of the minigame and tie up traps for lizards. Once you click on each rock and set up the trap, you can go to either one of these 2 bushes and shake out some lizards. Depending on your Hunter level, you will have different levels of success here. Once you have your lizards and you go to cook them, you actually break them down into different meat chunks, and I can say at level 85 Hunter and 99 cooking, I get 3 food chunks at a time, so this is by far the more preferred way to get food here. Regardless of which one you go for, either lizards or fish, it heals you tremendously. At level 99, I'm healing upwards of 34 HP per food, and again, this is a very early guide, so I imagine this is going to change depending on your HP level. However, the food here is still no joke, and I imagine it's going to keep you going regardless of where you're at. The last thing we have to worry about is the potions you can create here, and they're called the Moonlight Potion. These bad boys combine attack, strength, defense potions while also restoring your prayer. Again, a very early guide, so I only have the information I can personally find. So at level 99 in each one of these combat styles, these boosts are the equivalent of super attack, super strength, and a massive defense potion, getting you up to level 125. And the prayer restores 35 prayer points as well. I imagine this boost changes per your individual levels, but you can make these potions by grabbing these grubs in these 2 areas of the dungeon found on these plants, and all you have to do is use that pestle and mortar on the grub and combine it with vials of water. No herbs required for these potions. Now we get into the juicier part, which is the 3 bosses. Before we jump into each boss in particular, I'm going to have to start talking about the rooms themselves. Once you enter the room, you can peer over the battlefield and see what's currently going on. When you're ready to jump in, you click the statue and you're going to be teleported right up to the boss. When you first enter the room, it gives you a few seconds of protection, which is very nice as you can enter the room regardless of what's going on, like a special attack could be going on, or the normal melee phase is going on. A key part to know though is this boss is always going to stay centered in the circle of moon phases. While you're in the room, one of these moon phases will be highlighted and it's going to be covered by this symbol, and you want to stay on that symbol as long as it's present. Each 2 full melee attacks the boss does, it's going to cause this symbol to move to the next location, always moving in a clockwise fashion. So here we see the boss attack once, and then a second attack, and the symbol moves. This symbol gets closer to either a full moon or a new moon, or it shows as a 0 circle with nothing in it. So when that happens, get ready for one of the special attacks to go off. When the special is over, the symbol is going to appear right next to that in the next clockwise position. So it's going to go from here to the full moon location, then after the special is done, it's going to appear here. Now that we have an understanding of how the symbol moves and to get ready for the special attacks, we can look at each boss, starting off with my personal favorite, the Eclipse Moon. This golden boss attacks the player with stab-based melee attacks, and it's also weak to stab-based attacks, or at least that's what early analysis show. For its 2 special attacks, we have a ball special and a teleporting special. When the symbol moves over the new moon or that empty circle, the ball special is going to begin by pushing the player behind the ball. After a few seconds, the ball will go around the room, and it's your job to stay behind the ball opposite of the boss. So kind of think of it as the ball is going to be a shield and you need to stay away from that boss. The ball will travel around the room in 1 full rotation before it is completed, and the symbol is going to appear again on the ground 1 position past that new moon and signifies the completion of the special. If the symbol jumps to the full moon circle, the boss is going to begin a teleporting special, pushing all the players into the center of the room. From here, the boss is going to randomly teleport around you, and it's the player's job to look at the boss by clicking in that direction. So the special goes off, I'm forced into the center of the room, and I move my camera to give myself a top-down view of the room. From here, I wait for the first teleport, and when it appears, I click directly in front of my character to get him to face the boss, like this. After the boss and I attack each other, I quickly click to the next spot the boss appears at, like this. And finally, I do it one more time. This set of 3 teleports repeats a few times, and the goal is just to always face the boss whenever he's going to attack you. One fun fact about this special is your character will always match the attack speed of the boss. So regardless if you have a whip, a fang, or even a god sword out, you will always attack the boss the same tick. The special goes on for just a little bit, but once it's done, the symbol is going to appear back on the ground, and it's the end of the special. Whenever you're currently not dealing with the special attack, the goal is just to stand on the symbol and attack the boss with melee, moving whenever the symbol does. Next up, we have the Blue Moon. This boss attacks the player with crush-based attacks and is also weak to crush, again, as far as we can tell so far. When the symbol jumps to the new moon in this room, the boss is going to perform a water special. The goal of this special is to run to the east and west sides of the room and relight the braziers. During this time, the 2 sides of the room are going to be flooded with these water tornado things, and you just have to run past them to just light those braziers at the end. If you do get hit by one of these tornadoes, you'll take a small amount of damage and your run will be turned off. But when both sides of the room are lit, all you have to do is wait in the center of the room for the special to end. When the symbol moves over to the full moon circle, the boss is going to perform an ice attack. During the special, the boss actually takes away your weapon and encases it in a block of ice. Your goal here is to locate that block of ice with the symbol underneath it and start kicking or punching it. After a few seconds, ice is going to form on the ground in one of 2 patterns, and all you have to do is sidestep to a safe tile and wait for the attack to go off. Eventually, you're going to free your weapon back, automatically equipping it, and you just have to wait for the special to end. The good news is, during the special, you're always going to max hit that ice block, so RNG is cut out of the equation. Finally, we have the Blood Moon boss, which I personally think is the hardest of all 3 bosses, as all damage received in this room from the boss or the specials is going to heal it, so keep that in mind. This boss attacks the player with slash and of course is weak to slash. When the symbol moves to the new moon, the boss is going to deal some damage to you and spawn jaguars around the room, and your goal is just to fight one of these cats with the symbol directly in front of it. healing back the damage that was taken from you to spawn the jaguars. The good news is about this special is you can do it without taking any damage. Similar to the step back method at Muspa, the goal is to attack the jaguar with melee and take a step back a tick before it attacks you. When done correctly, you won't take any damage from the blood puddle behind you or from the cat. The bad news is this special takes a while to get used to as the timing's a little funky, but I promise you're going to get it down after just a couple runs. When the symbol hits the full moon, the boss throws you into a random spot around the room and it starts to rain blood. The goal here is to simply not stand on any tile covered by these blood puddles and you're good to go. Once you completed all 3 bosses, all you had to do now is enter the final room and claim your loot. Now, I mentioned at the beginning of this video that I've done this minigame in 3 different tiers of gear, and all 3 of them are on the screen now. To prove this minigame is fun and does not require high levels of gear, we're going to finish this guide out with a walkthrough using the lowest tier gear on the screen. And at the end of the guide, I'm going to show you the times that I was able to complete with each tier, so you can see how long each run is going to take you regardless of what you take. For this gear, it's as simple as can be. Starting out with the old reliable Nezzy helm, power amulet, fighter torso, black D-hide chaps, dragon boots, fire cape, dragon scimitar, Pharaoh's gloves, some kind of blessing, and regardless of what you want to keep in your shield slot, it's going to be fine. I personally have the Avernic Defender, but really you can have nothing in here and I really think you're going to be okay. The only thing else that I have in here is a simple ring of dueling just because I don't like seeing the empty slot. Upgrade and downgrade as you need to, but I personally recommend focusing on upgrades that improve defensive stats instead of focusing purely on DPS. The more defense that you have, the less food you're going to need, and overall the minigame just feels a lot better. Personally, my favorite gear as of recording this video looks somewhat like this. My current favorite spec weapon is the Crystal Halberg, but I'm going to need more testing before I fully figure out what I really like and what is going to be required to say that it's truly the best. Regardless of what you wear, I think you're going to see extremely similar clear times regardless of what you're using. And again, I'll break down the completion times of these 3 tiers at the end of the video. Now, I'm going to show you a speed up version of the entire minigame, or at least how I like to do it so you can personally see how I completed these runs. Starting from the bank, you run north to the starting room. From here, I personally like starting the game, entering the northeast path. Once we enter, we run all the way through the room until we get to the first campsite. Once we're here, I grab 1 herb supply, then I grab the fishing supplies, then I drop all my herb supplies and keep clicking the herb option until it gives you more. Personally, I like to start off the game with 4 potions, so that's why I'm doing this. After getting my supplies, I like to run over to the bridge and start fishing. I'm only going to grab 2, maybe 3 fish, as the goal right now is just to get past the first boss, which I personally find as the easiest. A quick note for the fishing, when you're done, you have to click on the fishing spot again to exit. If you just click around, your character just spins and it locks itself to fishing. But once you got your fish, I run back over to the campsite, cook them up, make a cup of tea if I need to, and then run over the bridge and search this bush. This is where the grubs are for the potions, so when I have 4 of them, I grind them up, make my potions, and head into this pathway to the boss room, which is the Eclipse room. Once that fight is over, we find ourselves in this area of the minigame next to the campsite. Grab some hunter gear, drop the butterfly net, as personally I have no idea what the butterflies do in this minigame, and run over to these rocks. After clicking each one and setting up the traps, shake the bushes to get some lizards and pick them up once they're trapped. Set these back up as many times as you need to. I personally go for 6 to 7 lizards in total as I make 3 food chunks per lizard, but depending on your hunting and cooking level, you're going to need more or less than this. Once they're all cooked up, make sure you heal up and enter this pathway to the Blue Moon boss. With this boss conquered, we are in this section of the minigame and it's time to take on the last boss, and I typically don't need any more supplies at this point. If you need to, make yourself a cup of tea to get that energy back up and run over to this entrance to fight the final boss. Once he's down, we find ourselves back at the same campsite, and all we have to do now is head south to this entrance and grab our rewards. When you're ready to leave, I personally go through the north exit, which puts you back here, which is super close to our first campsite, and I restock as I need to, or head directly into the Eclipse room boss again to start another run. To round this guide out, on screen you see all the completion times that I did with each set of gear that I showcased earlier. Each one of these, of course, has its pros and cons, like the tankier option means less food, but overall, I'm pretty impressed with the times that I was able to put up with these sets. There are some variations to each run, like the first runs in these lists has me starting at the bank outside of the minigame. So of course I have to add in that run time and of course getting all my supplies so I can complete the runs. Some clear times are different at the bosses due to just entering them at like a special attack or right at the end of one, which does slow down the kill quite a bit. And some completion times I had to stop real quick just to get more supplies. A massive factor that I really think is important to consider is experience as well. The tier 1 times were taken during my first 10 completions of the minigame, while the tier 3 times were taken after like 25 runs, so experience did speed this up quite a bit. But overall, these times are not wildly different like I thought they would be. As the minigame progresses and the community gets more used to the challenge, I'm sure there's going to be new metas and new gear options that are just going to blow these times out of the water, but for now, I think this wraps everything up and you should hopefully feel completely comfortable taking on this minigame. That's all that I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. Since this is a very early guide on the content, make sure you check out the comments for any changes that may have occurred. I personally don't think they're going to tweak this too much, but only time is going to tell. In the meantime, thank you so much again for watching. Let me know what you think of the guide in the comments. I love hearing feedback from you guys. Until we see each other again, I hope everyone's having a fantastic day. Good luck on your grinds, and I'll see you again very soon. Stay inspired.